We are joined today with my good friend Chloe, who's been a photographer for over 6 years. She was California raised, but she is based out in New York. How are you? We haven't seen each other in so long since our last photo shoot, right? Which we're gonna get into, but I want you to talk about you. How are you doing? How's everything going?
I'm doing pretty good. Busy, not always with photography, but just like life in general. But other than that, not too bad. Just I'm actually been editing a shoot today. That's what I spent half my day doing.
Oh my God. Is that like your worst things to do? Like as a photographer, I hear a lot of the times that it's not usually taking the pictures, it's the editing part that takes so long.
I genuinely don't love editing. I love the results I get at the end, but it's very tedious and I have to listen to music or at least have something else going on or I get distracted. I'm like, I want to do something else. I don't want to sit down to do this right now. So I have to get like in a zone to be able to actually edit the way I need to edit.
Well, now that we're talking about editing, I want to get into like the photography. So like what inspired you to get into photography? Like was it something that you were like, oh my God, like I really love the way like I'm taking these pictures. Maybe I should make this into like a career.
So I started photography right around the age of 14. Uh, my family ended up giving me a small little point and shoot camera. And I played around with that, mainly actually like nature photos for quite a while. And then I ended up taking a photography class in high school, which I really enjoyed. And like slowly but surely, I was like, okay, this is something I do enjoy. But actually, it wasn't until I moved to New York that I was like, I want to do this as a career itself. I had kind of pushed myself back, I don't know, for quite a while to allow myself to pursue it as a career. But like, it was on and off. It's always been a passion. But I don't think I had the confidence in myself that I was like, okay, I can actually do this and not have to do other things because I've always been creative.
I can definitely tap into you being very creative. I can say that from like our photo shoots, your mind is like so creative, so out of the box, which I feel like it's so amazing because I feel like, like you're the photographer. So like you want to make sure that everything that you're about to take a picture of looks great. And I feel like you really pay attention to all those little details. Like, and it's so amazing. That's a gift. Like, that's literally such a gift to have. I don't know how you do it, but it just comes out so amazing. So, can you tell me about what are some of the biggest challenges that you would say as a photographer you've gone?
For one, self-doubt. I think that's my biggest one, and like imposter syndrome. Is not allowing myself that, and I have a fear of failure. So I think my imposter syndrome stems from that. And I didn't necessarily want to give photography a chance because I felt like I was going to fail if I tried. That's definitely one of them. And then trying to find an answer for photography, I think, is another big one. Like, you can find other people, but sometimes it's not necessarily the people that are going to be able to help you find new revenues within your own career. And just trying to find people that might have that knowledge, because I am self-taught. I have only taken maybe 1 or 2 classes just for fun because I got a degree in art history. So I didn't really focus on photography in college. And being able to build that network without having any like real industry knowledge is kind of hard to find. You can try to find networking events as well, but those sometimes are also hard to find if you don't know people who know about the networking events. So I think those 2 things would be kind of the biggest challenges.
So I know you and I met through the Facebook, which was like the time for print Can you elaborate a little bit as to what time for print is? Because as a new photographer, like wanting to, like we were saying, like the networking and not knowing anyone, it can be scary because you're not really knowing who you're meeting when you're like, okay, yeah, like we're gonna collaborate and you don't know who you're meeting that day. Like that's how you and I met with our first photo shoot. We've never met until that day. So, can you explain like what time for print is? Because I feel like for me, especially as a makeup artist, when I finished school, that was something so new to me. I didn't know what TFP meant. I didn't know what that stand for.
So typically it's a collaboration amongst artists, and a lot of the time you get photos in exchange for your time, especially for newer artists, whether you're a photographer, makeup artist, stylist, etc. Anyone within that field that is looking to build a portfolio without necessarily having to pay someone to do it. For one, you might not have the resources to be able to pay because you just are starting out. And two, you might be new to an area, so you need to be able to find people to work with and then get used to the area and build your network as well. So I think mainly TFP for others. That and there's you can go to collaboration groups. Some people, it's also sometimes called time for print. I feel like there's like a couple other meanings, but I think those are like the main two. And it is great for those, I think, especially if you are coming out of a schooling system where you learn more about how to do the stuff rather than how to do it in the industry itself. So being able to even just talk with others, I think is very helpful. Even if you don't end up working with them, you can still exchange information with the people that are on those meetup groups.
So, do you think that someone that's like really starting fresh, do you recommend that they join those groups just to get their kind of like their feet wet and stuff?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I would highly recommend people to look into Facebook groups or any other type of group settings. There's also sometimes photo meetups that you can sign up for. Sometimes you do have to pay for those to be able to join, but you can join in. They typically have a set of models that go in and a set of photographers, but they will rent a studio where you are able to shoot those models in those studios and be able to network with people. And that way, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for photographers that are a little bit more well established because you don't necessarily get to control the setting and who you're working with and things like that. I think it's better when you are newer to an area or newer to photography to kind of talk with others that are interested in photography as well, or even the models of like, we can practice, we can get to know each other. We don't necessarily have to work with each other again within the meetup group. We can then plan shoots other days that aren't necessarily within the meetup group so that you can then control the situation. Because sometimes you also get ideas based off of the meetup groups as well, where you're like, I wouldn't have thought of that. And now I can then implement it in my own work.
So, like, I know that you've done a lot, but has there ever been a shoot that you're like, it wasn't like my best? Like, I feel like I could have done something different, or, you know?
Yeah, I have definitely a handful of shoots that I could say that I feel like I could have done better. One of the first shoots I did when I first moved to the city, there was like one thing after another that kept going wrong within the shoot. And it was the first time I was working with a specific makeup artist. It was another time I was supposed to work with two separate models. One of the models canceled last minute, and I had booked a larger studio time. So I was also technically losing money at that point because I booked it for that period of time and I was supposed to be shooting two people at the same time. And that didn't end up working out. So I had to like try to readjust. I tried to communicate what I wanted them to complete with the model's look as well as hair, because she said that she could do both. And I thought I vetted her as well by looking through her portfolio via her website and Instagram. And that didn't actually happen. And I ended up having to help her with the hair as well because the model I was working with had curly hair. And she said she was comfortable with curly hair, but she was not comfortable with curly hair. And then I should have just had the model come with her hair pre-done, which is unfortunate. So I had a lot to work, a lot of issues within a short period of time. And then the lighting that they said would be provided also didn't work well at the studio. Because I was like, okay, I'm used to those lights. And then the lights wouldn't fire properly. I believe I shared them like a while back, but then I ended up taking them off of my Instagram just because I was so unhappy with them. And I learned to fully vet a makeup artist before trying to work with them because I did not want to have to go through that experience again because it really stressed me out. And then just trying to clarify with people, I think, is the best thing. And I had to learn the hard way. Unfortunately, I thought I did, but I clearly did not do it well enough.
It's crazy because these are some of the things that, like, as a makeup artist, like I've gone through some things as well where like I done pictures, but I don't get the pictures till like months later, or like it's just like the studio where you see it, it's not exactly what the studio is when you look at the pictures. And I feel like these are some of the things that behind the scenes people don't see it. They just see the great picture, but they don't see what happened behind the scenes to get that photo. Like everything that you just explained, it's sometimes like these are why it's so important to talk about it. But even just in like that situation, like how and like, you know, editing and then having photos and, you know, like you have a family and everything, what would you say helps you when you just like have a creator's block, or like if you're like burnt out, like what do you do to help in those times?
So prior to moving to the city, I was in about a 3-year creative block. I almost honestly kind of gave up on photography before moving here. And I was like, I might do it here and there for fun, but I don't think I'm going to do it as much as I used to. And I ended up taking a workshop with 2 photographers that are my friends, as well as just like great photographers themselves, Emily Teague and Brandy Nicole, great photographers. And I ended up taking a workshop with both of them, and it kind of like reignited that creativity for me. It's like, oh, I am good. I can actually try to do this again. But honestly, doing other creative tasks rather than just like the same creative thing over and over, I think helps keep me interested in not just photography, but creating as a whole. Because sometimes I draw, other times I'll paint. I also do makeup occasionally on myself and sometimes others if I don't have the time. And I think trying to do things like that helps me the most. I also still have my little point and shoot camera that my parents got me when I was 14. And I take that around the city, trying to capture what I want to capture, like street photography, just little, I walk through the park quite often. So capturing scenes through Central Park, I think is fun for me as well. And honestly, because a point and shoot is more restrictive than the other cameras I typically shoot nowadays, it forces me to really focus on the composition of the photos themselves. And especially since the camera doesn't have a great zoom. So I'm like, okay, I have to move myself forward or backwards if I want to get the right composition, and I have to hold it still or it's blurry, more blurry than normal. So I think just like diversifying for me helps me stay creative and helps me with my burnout if I do end up falling into burnout.
So you've had amazing, amazing work. I think my favorite is the one where you did the makeup on you and your mom. Literally my favorite. after this podcast, please, everyone needs to follow Cloee on her Instagram. Please go check them out because they're amazing. But that literally was like one of my favorites, favorite picture because you guys look identical, one. But was just the detail that you put, like the moth. It was just beautiful. Like, it's literally so gorgeous. That's my favorite. But what would you say is your favorite to shoot? Like, what's your favorite?
Oh, that's such a hard question for me because that's always been the hardest thing is to niche down. I like too many things in my opinion. Recently, I started venturing into like creative product photography, and which for me has been a new fun challenge because I enjoy working with people as well with portraits, but I actually have a few disabilities. So sometimes managing portrait shoots can be very tiring and painful actually on my body. So being able to kind of set up something in my home and not necessarily having to stand for 4 to 5 hours and being able to sit in between, I think has been beneficial. But honestly, it might not be my favorite, but I think it's the most thing I'm most proud of is a little stop motion I made for the holidays. I did some photos of a pair of Betsy Johnson earrings, and it has a little stand mixer and a gingerbread man. And I have a whole bunch of vintage cookie cutters. So I just like moved them in to circle around the earrings themselves because it's a little gingerbread man and it's cookie related. I was like, that was the first thing I've done as like a full stop motion. So I think that's something I really enjoyed and I was very, very happy with how it turned out.
Literally, it's like the little details. Even you just talking about it, it's so amazing. And I really want to get into the projects that you and I have done. I remember, like we were saying in the beginning, that we met through the Facebook with the TFP, and I remember we were talking about like another model that we were supposed to be shooting, but it just didn't work out. And I remember exactly when the Pat McGrath happened and she did the glass skin. And I think either you sent it to me or I sent it to you, and I was like, we need to do this. Like, this is so iconic. But I know that you and I wanted to do something different because everyone was doing kind of like the same looks where it was just like, the very yellow, like blush and the blue, which was kind of like what she had done. So I knew that you and I wanted to do something so different. And we also wanted to do two models. We wanted to have two different skin tones as well. And I feel like when we set that up and we got the location and everything, I just got to see like your creative side because you had the corset. You were like, I have the skirt, I have this that goes with it, and this will look great. And then we were trying to find exactly the models that we wanted to capture that. And I feel like they both did amazing of giving that look. And I feel like this is so important to know as well because as a photographer, there's certain things that you want to have like done, like everything to be perfect. But us as the makeup artist, we want to make sure that we're doing that for the photographer. So I remember when we went in, and let me tell you, that glass skin took longer than what we expected it to take. Because we rented the room for like 2 hours, but it
I
was
think
something.
longer.
Was it right? We had to have
I think
had, like,
about
4
4.
hours. Okay, yeah, like 4 hours. But I remember it was just like trying to get the airbrush to trying to get the glass skin because now I wish we had the product that she just came out with. Like, she literally just came out with the mask of that. But I remember watching all the videos and trying to figure out exactly what she was using. And I remember like even having your pointers there, like, hey, I think she needs more, or she needs more blush, or I think we should do this. It's so helpful because you're helping me and I'm trying to do everything as well to make sure that those pictures come out just as great. And I remember just having the 2 models come in and seeing all, like, the clothes you had and the details. I'm telling you, your eye of things is just it's amazing. It's such a gift because we were just moving pieces and we were like, "Okay, yeah, no, we wanna look like this." And then you having them, like, hold hands and they're pulling back. Literally, that's, like, one of my favorite pictures was that one where they're kind of holding the hand. But that day was so amazing. But again, this was the first time that you and I had met because we were just messaging. I didn't know you, but I felt, and this is another thing, I feel like when you're working with someone, you want to make sure that they're aligned with what you're into. You don't want to just pick someone. So your style was very up my like Lee. I was like, oh my God, I need to work with her. Like her style is amazing. I loved it. And we hit it off that first photo shoot. And the energy that day was just so amazing in that room. We had such a great time that when it got down to the time, we were like, okay, we need to like hurry up. We need to like pack. But I feel like it really did, like, help, and I feel especially, like, when you're booking a makeup artist or when you're booking a photographer, you wanna make sure that you guys are helping each other, you know? So, like, let's say if you are doing, like, TFP, the studio, split that amongst you guys or, like, come to an agreement where that you both don't feel like, "Oh, man," you know? Our second one, I feel like that was, like, your baby. Like, when we got there, you had all these pictures that you literally painted yourself. Like, you had all the paints, all the little details, even down to the earrings. Remember the earrings that she had on were, like, little paint
Oh,
palettes?
palettes. Yeah.
Yes. So, that one was fun. That one was definitely a fun one, too. We had our model just, like, had the paint on her face. We wanted to do something so different, but we wanted also to incorporate, like, the Nessa Marks, like, color fix into them as well. Um, but I wanna hear what your thoughts are of the photo shoots. Like, what did you think, like, first meeting or those shoots?
I think with our first one, I was just really excited because I think everyone was just obsessed with that glass skin, which rightfully so. Like that was iconic. No one had really seen that before. Everyone was like so awe-inspired by it that we're like, how can we like interpret it for ourselves? So it's not like an exact recreation, but we still definitely touched on certain details. Of course, the skin itself, the thin eyebrows, and then sort of like almost like Rococo Victorian kind of esque clothing, a little brighter. I think a little less grunge. I think we went brighter than the like darker atmosphere of the show itself, but we definitely wanted that corseted look as well because I just think the structure with the glass skin works really well. I just remember having a lot of fun and trying to help like tweak the mask. I was like, I don't know if this is thin enough. And while you were trying to apply certain things and try to get the airbrush working, I was like, let me see if I can mix this to see if this is the right consistency. And I was like, no, this is still a little too thick. And I think honestly that was the issue, was that it was too thick going into it. And then we finally found the proper consistency for the makeup look itself. So, and I think having a time constraint is one of the hardest things within a creative shoot, especially when you don't own your own studio. Being able to manage unforeseen hiccups is hard, where you can, which I think that's also why we did a 4-hour time period, is like, oh, we should have enough time within 4 hours to do 2 models with this makeup look. And so we thought we had enough time, which we still completed the photos within the time. I would have loved a little bit more time with the second model, but we made it and we got through it. I just remember having great music going on Also, just while we were waiting, I was trying to steam and get the clothing all ready and set up lights as well, so those were proper. Did some test shots, so I knew the lighting was working before the model stepped into it, so that we knew the right lighting consistency. And that one was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. I still love that shoot till this day. And then the one we did with the painter's look, I think that was a lot of fun as well, and really enjoyed the progression of the looks that we did, where it was like, oh, there's just like a little bit of like smudgy makeup on the eyes, and then the addition of like the red lips also being like lined over was a lot of fun. I think the beret definitely added that. It was like a little bit of like French vibes, but not fully. And just the progression of like the mess was so much fun. So I really enjoyed the storytelling aspect of that one as well. And getting multiple looks out of that was also an accomplishment. And I'm very thankful that we were able to shoot that one at my home rather than at a studio, so that we didn't necessarily have to worry about a time constraint within that as well. And granted, I don't always like to shoot at my home just because it's limiting with the space that I have, and studios sometimes are a bit better for that, so that everyone has a spot to like kind of throw things, which granted you do at my home as well, but you have a little bit less shooting space basically within my small kitchen living room combined. But I think the model we worked with that day also was great. I think you did great. And when I first started photography and before I moved here, I did pretty much everything on my shoots. I did the makeup, I did the styling, I did the hair, I did the set design, props, and the photography. I wore too many hats, to be honest, too many at a time. And I got accustomed to doing all of that. And I think that's kind of why I've been able to find the small details of like, okay, this is something I recognize because I had to recognize it within my own work while I was doing everything. And I appreciate when the makeup artist, especially when it's like my own concept, makeup artist, model, everyone else involved, are so open and willing to be able to help that come to life. Whether it's like, okay, let's like tweak this a little bit so that this is the way that we both want it to look, basically.
It's another thing like that's so important, because especially when you're doing like a mood board, like amongst the photographer or the makeup artist, you want to find that whatever you have, that model fits that as well, or they're comfortable as well. You want to make sure that you have a good communication with everyone that you're doing that project with. So I remember that we kept them in the loop, it's the models and everything, but there's just a lot of details behind that you also didn't see. Like the first photo shoot that we did, we had to tell them like, if you smile, if you do anything, it's going to crack. And that's the end of the shoot, because that mask on the face, had she laughed at anything, it would have just moved. It would have just been done. Or even like with the second photo shoot, like had we done a paint that was off, it would have not aligned. So those are certain certain things I feel like it's so important, like especially with the model, you have to let them know like, hey, this is the time range that we're going to be here for 4 hours. So our models were aware of the time, because some models may be like, hey, I can, like I have another, like, tell them straight, like, this is the time, can you do it or you can't do it? Or show the mood board to the model and be like, hey, are you comfortable with this? Is this something that aligns with you? Because a model as well, they have their own portfolios on their page. So something that we may want to do may not be something that they want to do. But we were touching base like with a makeup artist and a photographer. How important is it as the photographer? Like how important is it for the makeup artist to do exactly what you need them to do. Because I remember learning that, like, you got to go a little bit higher with the makeup than what you're usually used to for the picture, for you to see it in the picture. So I remember a lot of my models, they'd be like, "Ooh, that's a lot," and I'm like, "Trust me, it looks different when the photographer goes to take it." And it helped as well because I feel like less editing having to do when, like there's not a lot of things that needs the editing because, and I appreciate that with you because I remember both of our photo shoots. You would tell me like, "Hey, like she's missing a little bit of this," or "She needs a little bit more of a blush," or "Let's add a little bit more of the paint on this side." So I really appreciate that. But how important is it when choosing a makeup artist for a photo shoot?
It's very important because it can be a little bit of editing to hours of extra editing, basically, especially with the cleaning up fine lines. So if you do any sort of graphic looks, you want a makeup artist with a
Oof.
steady hand and that just have like a consistent flow so that it isn't as jaggedy, basically. And I think with a makeup artist, skin prep is also really important so that the base skin is also just like glowy and allows the makeup to sit on the skin so much better than if you didn't do the prep beforehand. Because you can sometimes have the models do prep beforehand, but honestly, I think having the makeup artist do it is more beneficial. I've also noticed within working with makeup artists, actually having the makeup be brought up to the ears and the neck so that everything is consistent throughout the entire face. Sometimes, depending on the shoot itself, like if you have more of the chest open onto the shoulders, sometimes having actually makeup extended, maybe not like foundation fully, but something to add like a glow to it can honestly add a lot, especially if you're working with flash or constant light. So ears to the neck, I think just makes it seamless for the photographer because sometimes if the ears, let's say on someone is bright red because they just have more red ears, I would have to go in and like highlight that tone range and be able to bring it down or remove the red to match it to the rest of the face. So having it consistent everywhere, it makes it very beneficial. And I also do appreciate when, even if it's not like foundation, but something else that like adds like a nice sheen to the chest, if there's more of a chest being shown, because it catches highlights very well so that there's a little bit more reflection and dynamism to the photos themselves. And so I think with those, I think that's highly important that a makeup artist understands that and also understands what the makeup is going to look like under lighting. And I also am just partial to like editorial-esque makeup because I do like bright blushes and things like that. I think it does depend on the shoot that you're working on. If you're doing more of like a natural beauty shoot, you only want like a light flush. But I think that also, for one, needs to be communicated by the photographer what type of shoot you're doing. But also, I think the makeup artist needs to understand what like a beauty shoot should kind of look like. That it kind of looks like refreshed, nice, clean skin, and maybe like a light flush, or they can still have like a lipstick if they want to, depending on the beauty shoot that you're doing. But if it's, let's say, for like a skincare brand or something like that, you don't typically want it to be focused on different parts of the makeup. You just want the skin to look really, really nice. And I think that shifts depending on what you're looking for a makeup look and beauty look. And I think it's important for a makeup artist to understand, especially if they are wanting to do multiple different things rather than specific niches. Like there's always a niche within every sort of creative industry. But if you're wanting to do a whole bunch of different things, being able to understand and implement those is, I think, highly needed.
I agree though, because like I specialize in bridal now, but I love a pop of color. Like, and that's something also you need to, as a makeup artist, don't just say yes to a photo shoot just because you're like, oh, yes, I'm getting into a studio. If they're asking for like a graphic liner and you know you're not good at it, don't just go and wing it, because then you're putting more work on you, but you're putting more work on the photographer as well and the model. They're going to sense that you're nervous or something, you're not comfortable with it. So they're going to be uncomfortable, they're going to be nervous. And then the photographer, again, like we were just talking about, like when you book a studio may not always be 4 hours. You're given 2 hours. So in reality, you're only really given, you want to take over maybe like a half hour tops with the makeup, because you want to be able to give the photographer enough time to get those pictures. But if a pop of color, like you were saying, like if blush is something that you're not into, you just do skin, but now you're like throwing rhinestones and graphic liner, then I don't do it. Don't do it just because you're like, oh, I just want to get my feet wet. You definitely want to make sure that you're doing it because it's something you like. So like I was saying, like I love bridal, but you know me, I love a pop of color once in a while. And our next project, I can't wait for everyone to see that one. And that one has a lot of color. But it's true, like you can have a niche, but you don't want to dibble dabble into like all these different things. Like for me, if someone told me like, hey, I want like these crazy graphic liners, I am not your girl, but I can find you a makeup artist. If you ever told me like, hey, I want this, I can tell you like, hey, you know what, Chloe, like that's not really my style, but I can find you someone that will help you with that. So I just feel like that's just very important as well. But it also can be as a photographer too, where like if a photographer is just doing weddings and now all of a sudden they're wanting to do editorial, like it has to be something that they want to do. It can't just be like, oh, it's just a camera, it's just pictures. And I feel like you definitely want to make sure when you're doing a collaboration, you have everything. Have that mood board ready for the photographer so they have an idea of what you want done. Or even with the model, like, hey, make sure that this is done. So like I always make sure I tell the models, like, you know what? Make sure that the face is bare. Because sometimes you'll get someone, if they're just coming off of another photo shoot, you just never know. Like, hey, just let me know. But majority of the time, you want to make sure that their face is bare. And I'll do the rest. But I just feel like that's just very important as well. But it's true. I love a pop of color once in a while. But I have one more question. If you could work with anyone, who is like someone that's like your idol, like a photographer or model or anyone, you can work with someone, who would it be?
There's a specific model that I have followed for quite a while, and they're completely bald, and they do a lot of like very surreal photo shoots, and they have very like pale skin. They're just very, very interesting. I cannot remember her Instagram handle right now, but I just love what she does, and everything she does just has almost like a Grimm's brother kind of storybook feel to me, where I've always been kind of drawn to the darker grunge kind of aesthetic, even though if you look at my page is quite bright and colorful, but I like aesthetically I enjoy the grunge look as well, even if it's not exactly what I shoot. I do love color within my own work, but I love the dramatic lighting. I find it very fun and interesting, but I also draw inspiration from a lot of like old paintings because I am an art historian and did study that. I got to study a whole bunch of different types of paintings and photography and other types of mediums. So I tend to draw a lot of inspiration from things like that. But her work and how she models is definitely reminiscent, in my opinion, of like almost Baroque-esque paintings. And I just love that. I love that. And I find it so fascinating. And if I find her, I will send it to you so that you can tag her in it.
Yes, I definitely will. But everyone stay tuned because we have an amazing and fun project coming very soon. I feel like everyone's really going to love this one. This
Oh,
one's
I
going to
hope
be a
so.
good one. It has a lot of color, so be prepared. And I'm going to put all of your handles at the bottom so that everyone can follow you and get a look at you. Make sure to check out her website so you can see also her packages as well. And please, yes, go work with Cloee. You'll be so happy. And it was so good to see you again. I miss you and I can't wait to work with you again.
I miss you too. We have not seen each other. I don't know how long it's been, but I'm looking forward to working and seeing
Since the
you again.
last photo shoot.
I know, but I don't even know when that was, to be honest.
I want to say it's going to be almost a year ago. And then
Oh
after
my
that, like you got married, like literally, right? It was like 2 months. It was like 2 months before your wedding.
I got married in
Was it?
May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say it was around there.
Must have been like around March or April,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's
no,
crazy.
I think it was in May. I honestly think it was in May. Did
So
I
it's
break
probably
my
right
toe
before
yet?
the. Yes, you did. You did break
I
your
did
toe.
have my so it
You
was
had
in
your
May.
boot on. Yeah.
Can't forget the boot. The boot made an appearance. But I was like, wait, I could have sworn I was going to your house with the cane. You see, like, don't let anything stop you. Not even a
Nope.
broken toe. Like, just go and do it. And I was like, I literally messaged you. I remember that photo show. I was like, hey, listen, I broke my toe, but the show must go on. We're going to still go on with the shoot. And I was standing. We were moving. And I was like, I didn't even feel it, honestly, because we got so into the zone. But it was definitely the beginning of May. I think it was literally 2 weeks before your wedding.
It had
Because I
to have
remember
been.
it was in May because I broke my toe in May.
Yep. I definitely was made then. Because I think you might have been my last photo shoot before my wedding, actually. Yeah, I genuinely think that was the last time before I got married that I shot as a unmarried woman.
But you are doing amazing. I am so proud of you. Like I said, make sure we are checking out Cloee's page. Like, I'm going to leave everything, all the links below. Make sure to check the website as well. And I can't wait. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, they're going to be so excited with our upcoming shoot. Like,
I can't
there's
wait.
probably going to be rhinestones with that one. I know we mentioned those earlier, but you are comfortable with rhinestones. So, rhinestones,
I'm good
big
with
hair.
the rhinestones. Woo! I can't wait. I think that day we're gonna have to have that music playing and everything. It's gonna be so much fun. So
It's a must.
stay tuned. All right, we're signing off, guys.